Hello, each and everyone, and welcome to another edition of Soul Sessions. I'm your host, Lewis King, and I thank you for joining me once again for Soul Sessions. And it is my desire, and I just pray on today that as we go into part two of You Live What You Have Been Taught, that it will bless someone. I have no idea, who this may be for. And if you are listening and this speaks to you and it ministers to you, then feel free. I encourage you, share the information, share the video link. Um, and if any of the other videos are a blessing to you, share those videos, subscribe, and let's just share the word, I say, because this is all about if we can help each other with the information that God gives us so that we can experience the fullness and the wholeness and live a healthy, abundant life, then let us help each other and bless each other by just passing the information along. I am not looking for any glory or anything. This is just simply about the things that God put into my spirit that He feeds me. I just want to share this information to just simply help someone. So that is my desire, my soul desire, my heart's desire, that someone will be blessed. So on today, this is part two of You Live What You Have Been Taught. And today's subject, it would deal with regaining soul custody of yourself. Regaining soul custody of yourself. And soul custody is a legal term used in family court, regarding parental rights of the custodial parent versus the rights regarding the non-custodial parents. And soul custody is broken down into two ways in the family court system, within the legal system. Number one deals with sole legal custody, and number two deals with sole physical custody. Now, before I get into the rest of this, I want to just break this down. We want to understand, what does soul mean? SOLE. What does soul mean? Soul comes from the Latin word solus, meaning alone, and it can describe being the only person involved in something. Custody, we want to understand what custody is. Custody is defined as the protective care or guardianship of someone or something, taking responsibility for the life that has been allocated to you by God, our Creator. So when we look at regaining soul custody of yourself, ourselves as an individual, there are so many things that have happened where people have lost custody of themselves. And this is what we want to address on today. Now, going back to sole custody in the family court system, there are times in family relationships when families break up due to divorce and separation, when the family court system has to intervene in making judgments regarding the welfare of the child or children, who has sole custody of the children, or if the parents will share joint custody of their children or of their child or children. The correlation of this example that I am using is this. God, our Father and Creator, has ordained for each of our lives that we have custody of ourselves as an individual, in order for us to live the fullness of the life that He has purposed and designed for each of our lives, and not live under the enslavement of anything or anyone. That is what God our Father has ordained for our lives. When we look at, the over 5 billion people that are on the planet Earth, many of us, whatever our ethnicity, our racial groups, our cultures, the things that we have been taught, the things that we have experienced, Many people every day, past and present, at some point in their life, they may have experienced losing custody of themselves, sole custody of themselves, wherein they are not living the life that God purposed and designed for them, but rather they are living an alternative life that God never did design for them. And so this is about regaining custody of who we are. When you lose custody, I think about this right here. When a person goes out, they commit a crime, and law enforcement gets involved. So the crime is so terrible or so heinous or whatever, and law enforcement, they catch up with the individual. They they subdue the individual, and many times when we lose custody of ourselves, first of all, we become subdued. Then they may read the person their rights. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Then they put the person under arrest. Many of us have lost custody of ourselves because we have been under arrest of so many things, of the people or things in our life. And then, after being subdued, after being arrested, then we are taken into custody. We're taken to the police station. We are processed, and we are put in jail. So the correlation of all of that is this. When we look at our lives today, and this is living what we have been taught. Look at the things that have come out of our families, wherein we have experienced being subdued by different things. We have experienced where certain things that we were taught have caused our life to come under arrest. We have, when we look at different things that we have been taught, these things have literally taken away our freedom, who we are. So we have been taken into custody. And then we have been put in jail or confinement by the things that we have been taught that have come out of family. I want to go into this section right here. This section here, it deals with the subject of historically, you can die from simply wanting custody of yourself when you were the property of another. Historically, you could die from simply wanting custody of yourself when you were the property of another. Now, what this deals with, when it comes to the racial ethnicity of my racial group as a black person, black people, I want to share some facts concerning how slavery caused many people of color to lose custody of the quality and the freedom of their life, their will, their choices, their beliefs, their pursuit of happiness, their family structure, a man's manhood, a woman's womanhood, a child's innocence, their self-expression, their voice, their bodies, their sexuality, their social connections, their privileges as an individual, their inalienable God-given rights given to them in their creation, all at the economic expense of others, and dominance to exert and enforce their will of control over the lives of people of color. So this is taking a historical look, and I just want to share, just a few facts with you all today during this soul section, looking at this from a historical perspective. Number one, in the history of the transatlantic slave trade between 1525 and 1826, this is dealing with custody. 12.5 million Africans were shipped to the New World, and 10.7 million survived the passage to North America, the Caribbean, and South America. Only about 388,000 to 390,000 were transported directly from Africa to North America. Number two, dealing with custody. Children typically comprise 26% or more of the slave ship's human cargo. Number three, the importation of slaves into the United States, or slaves being imported into the U.S., was banned by Congress in 1808. Yet by 1860, the nation's black population had jumped from 400,000 to 4.4 million, of which 3.9 million approximately were slaves. We're still dealing with custody. Number four, in the U.S., on average, a slave mother gave birth to between 9 and 10 children, twice as many in the West Indies. And this is according to the Gilder Institute of American History. In 1860, less than 10% of the slave population was over 50 years old, and only 3.5% was over 60%. People of color have experienced more invasion of their privacy and space than any other racial ethnic group on the planet. So when we're looking at regaining custody of ourselves, then we have to look at some historical aspects to just to lay a foundation and an understanding of where I am going with this. You know, what I just shared, these are some brief historical facts, that show how things were during those times. The sad thing is this: although slavery has been outlawed and people of color no longer live under that system of slavery, we find that in today's society, all ethnic racial groups are living under some form of slavery, under the guise or guise just simply an external form or appearance or manner of presentation that's typically concealing the true nature of something using a different name. You know, wherein many of us are losing custody right now, this very moment in our life, where we are presently the captive to in the form of a person or a thing, or have lost custody of ourselves sometimes without even realizing it, that although we're not under that system of slavery, there are other things that can still enslave our lives. And sometimes we may not even realize it, because sometimes you could stay in a situation, an environment, an atmosphere for so long that is negative, that subtracts from you, that abuses you, that takes away from you, that you can literally acclimate and adjust yourself to that environment. And that is very sad. That's very sad. And so when we look at you live what you've been taught. Our ancestors experienced losing custody of everything about themselves, being viewed as property, though they were fearfully and wonderfully made by the Almighty God. Many of our ancestors, they passed, different enslavement teachings and mindsets that affect the psyche and the psychological way of how we think to the next generation. And this is why so many of our relationships fail miserably. Because if we do not regain our God custody, I emphasize this, if we do not regain our God custody of ourselves, how God created us, how He created us to be an original work of His hands to do incredible things, with the tools of success built into the fiber and the DNA of our being. Each of us can find ourselves as an individual, still living the perpetuation of a new slavery experience in our lives, wherein we have lost custody of self to past personal relationships, family experiences, hurts, wounds, brokenheartedness, image issues, bad choices, and many decisions that we have made, and the list, it just goes on and on. So historically, I wanted to share that to correlate what happened back then to where we are now. And it is possible for a lot of those things, those old slave traits and slavery ways that was passed, you know, in the black ethnic group and with black culture, but also with other cultures, how things can be passed from one generation to another. And when I look at how my ancestors, they lost custody of themselves. They did not ask anyone to do a home invasion. They did not ask anyone to just come in and to disrupt their lives. They did not put up a billboard sign that says, "I want to be taken captive," but yet they experienced something in a physical way through being taken captive and enslaved, where everything about their being, their psychological aspect, their emotional aspect, the physical aspect, the sexual aspect, the social aspects, the financial aspects, all of the different aspects of their life was completely changed against their will. Completely changed against their will. And so when we look at that happened to them against their will, the things that are happening to us right now, that are going on with us in our life, these are many things wherein we have willfully in some cases, allowed our pain and our hurts and past experiences, just like slavery was their past experiences. Well, each of us, we have past experiences that can represent and perpetuate our pain, from things that we experienced in family to things that we experience outside of family, that have us at a place where we have lost custody. This next section here that I want to talk about, it deals with a question. It's a very, very interesting question. And the question that I am going to ask right now to you as well as to myself is, how long have you been paralyzed? How long have you been paralyzed? Now, someone may sit and may wonder, they may say, well, I am not paralyzed. I am not in a wheelchair. I do not need the assistance of a wheelchair. I have the free movement, of all my members and the faculties of my body. I am not paralyzed. But I'm not talking about paralysis when it comes to the physical body. This is, something else, but I'm going to use the definition of paralysis that apply to the physical body. Now, paralysis deals with the inability to move and sometimes feel anything in part or most of the body. Typically from 4 things that will stop you, putting you in a state of being completely unable to operate normally or effectively. So that is paralysis. Paralysis deals with the inability to move. Many of us, because we have lost custody of ourselves, we have stopped moving. Yes, our feet are carrying our body, our legs are moving, we're swinging our arms, we have our own unique walk and all of that stuff. I said, but we're physically moving, but on the inside, we are not moving. because we're stuck. So it says it deals with the inability to move and sometimes feel anything in part or most of the body typically. And so there are times because when you lose custody of yourself, it's just like we just lose touch with reality. We lose touch with who we are. It's just like we just stop feeling anything. And I know God did not make us a machine or a robot, but yet we can get to a place where it's like we do not feel anything for ourselves or anyone else. And so, four things that will stop you and I as individuals that can put us in a state of being completely unable to operate normally or effectively are these four things. Number one, which is illness. It is one thing to suffer and experience illness with our physical health. Yet another thing when our soul, our spirit man is ill and experiencing deprivation. Our mind is ill and experiencing deprivation. Our emotions are ill and out of control, suffering from an unhealthy imbalance, all of which culminate into being sicker than what we realize. This is one of the things that can cause paralysis in our life and cause us to lose custody or be one of the things that cause us to lose custody of ourselves. The second one is poison. Now, poison is a substance that is capable of causing the illness or death of a living organism when introduced or absorbed. So, this is another question to you and I. Who or what is the toxins that you were introduced to? What is his name? What is her name? What is the name of that thing that that was introduced to us? What is that thing for as, that got absorbed into us? How did he, she, or it get so absorbed into our system so deep to the extent that he, she, or it, that thing, is paralyzing our life right now? I want you to think about the poison. Think about the toxins that got absorbed into. First of all, it was introduced to us in a formal greeting. Second, after doing the formal introduction, then at some point, how did they get absorbed into us? How? So that is a question to think about right there. How did he, that male in your life, how did she, that female, that individual in your life, and how did it, that thing, how did it paralyze your life and shut it down? The next thing I want to talk about is injury. Now, injury is an instance of being injured. And some of the synonyms for the word injury is wound, bruise, cut, gash, laceration, scratch, graze, trauma. And injuries are not only physical in nature. We want to understand that. Injuries are not only physical in nature. They're not all the time, they're not physical. The same question is, how did he, that male, how did she, that female, or how did it, that thing, cause injuries to you and I that has our life experiencing paralysis? How did that thing or how did that person wound you How did that thing, or how did that person bruise you? How did that thing or that person cut you, gash you, cause a laceration, scratched you, grazed you, caused the trauma that you are experiencing in your life that has put you on lockdown and that has shut you down in all the different areas of your life. The last one, dealing with the four things that cause paralysis, is impairment. Impairment deals with the state of being diminished, weakened, or damaged, especially mentally or physically. I ask the same question once again. How did that male, how did that female, or how did that thing cause your life to become diminished? How did it cause your life to become weakened? How did that male or that female or that thing that we may have opened ourselves up to damage our life extensively to the point now you and I are paralyzed and no longer living? We're no longer moving forward. We're no longer growing. I mean, we have literally planned our funeral, picked out the casket, picked out the burial plot, chose the mortician, and decided I want a closed coffin because we have lost the wholeness and the worth of who we are. And that may seem like a very extreme, way to explain that, or maybe very dramatic. But I put it that way because sometimes we can totally lose focus of ourselves so great that life no longer really has any meaning. It just really has no meaning. You know, there are so many things you and I have experienced from what we were taught in our upbringings in our families that have literally caused millions upon millions of people to have lost custody of themselves. And it all started at some time, at some place. It started at the root, the origin. And once again, if we want to understand the person of who we are today, then we want to look first at the root and the origin. Look first within your family. And this is so important and it is so imperative, and I emphasize there are so many things about you and I when we look at the positive and we look at the negative. It's always great to receive positive things from our family. But when we look at the negative things that we have received and where we are today and how it affects our relationships on the job, it affects our relationships personally, it affects our relationships with building friendships with other people. It literally affects our relationship with other family members, whether it's immediate family, siblings, relatives. In this day and time, because sometimes we've lost custody of ourselves to the extent family do not even care about family the way that they used to. I mean, we can lose custody of ourselves so much it's like we want to live on an island by ourselves. Have nothing to do with absolutely anyone. We can become so introverted into ourselves wherein absolutely nothing about ourselves matters. Family matters. It's just pretty much an I don't care way of living and an I don't care way of thinking. And so, once again, the question is, how long have you been paralyzed? How long have you been paralyzed? This last section that I want to deal with on today with today's soul session. This deals with when a man loses custody of himself. And I will talk about when a woman loses custody of herself in another soul session. But I feel directed to talk about when a man loses custody of himself. One of the things that we know is it talks about in Genesis that God said, let us make man in our own image. And he's talking about making spiritual man, putting him in a male physical body, giving him the essence of God's personality and all of these different things. And so when God made us as males, he put his essence and his personality and, himself into us. But somewhere along our path, somewhere along our journey as men, things have happened where we can even lose custody of ourselves. And in talking in this section here, when a man loses custody of himself, when a male has lost custody of himself, not understanding and knowing who he is through God, and not having God's principles as his source foundation to build upon in every area of his being, he will be affected and diminished as a man. He will be affected and diminished as a husband. He will be affected and diminished as a father, as a son. He will be affected and diminished as a brother. If he is married, he will be affected and diminished even as a provider, whether he's married or even single. He'll be affected as a protector, as a teacher of his family. He'll be affected and diminished even as a friend, as a giver, because God created and made man a giver. But when a man does not understand and know who he is through his creator, through his father, then he will not understand that he was created to be a giver also. Also, he cannot provide intimacy to the woman in his life. And this is not talking about sex. This is not talking about sex. But he cannot provide intimacy to the woman in his life. And that deals with the culmination of a complete communication. A complete communication, if I use another word. And he cannot do this because he hasn't experienced intimacy with God and with himself. So he lacks the ability to communicate effectively with himself, having the ability to check himself when he is out of order. He cannot communicate effectively with his significant other, nor with his children. If he's a father, that's if he's a father, he loses the ability to hold himself accountable, responsible. He will not hold himself to having positive ethics about his manhood spiritually, his manhood emotionally, his manhood psychologically, his manhood financially, his manhood sexually, socially, etc. He will not see his God worth, nor his God value, nor will he understand the depths of his God design, his God purpose, and his God assignment in this world to make a positive impact. Nor will he operate in a place of maturity and maturation, making no excuses for himself ever. In other words, he will call it exactly as it is for what it is. And he can be able to call his own stuff out. In other words, he do not necessarily have to sit around and wait for somebody to tell him what he need to do, what he need to get in order. He is positioned, and he is in a place where he can tell his own self what he need to do, because he sees himself. If he lost custody, and all of this deals with, if he has lost custody of himself, he can't do those things. If he has custody of himself, he's able to do those things. Many of us as men, many of us have lost custody of ourselves, and we have experienced, many, just many devastating things in our life that break us down so bad that we are no longer operating functional, normal as God has designed us to. And the truth be told, many of us as men, even right now, as I do this soul session, many of us, we're stuck. We are stuck. Many of us, we can find ourselves stuck when we've lost custody of ourselves. Some of this is due to our relationship with our Father. Many of us as men, sometimes we're having so many issues and problems within our own self, and this is due to the connection and the relationship that we had with our Father. A father's presence is so mandatory and so important, and I emphasize this, that a father's presence in the lives of his male sons and female daughters, it sets a precedent and a foundation so strong for them to build upon. And when the absence of a father's presence is not there, it affects his male sons. It affects his daughters. It affects, certain decisions and choices that they make. It affects, certain people who they connect and who they hook up with and who they run with and who they associate with. It affects, things along the lines of, the relationship with the father, the way that their father treated their mother. Whether they was married or whether they did not marry, but still, the way that their father treated their mother, the way that he demonstrated different things to them in a positive way or a negative mindset. Those things, reverberate in the lives of his children. So we as men, many of us, we are stuck because the relationship with our Father is bad. And many of us, we're dealing with animosity and bitter feelings and hatred and, and malice. And, we can't stand our daddies. We can't stand them. We do not want nothing to do with them. We do not want to be around them. Have absolutely no dealings. But it's just like what I said in You Live What You Have Been Taught, Part 1. Many of our fathers, I re-emphasize this, I just want you to think about this. So this can help us from becoming stuck in a place that we can't move. Many of the things that your father did not give to you, just think about this. Maybe it's possible that his father did not give it to him. And then maybe your granddaddy, which was your daddy's father, didn't give it to him. And then your great-great-granddaddy didn't give it to your great-granddaddy. And it just keeps going back. So when you look at the cycle, we want to be able to address becoming unstuck. So we've lost custody of ourselves due to bad relationships with our Father. We become stuck and lost custody of ourselves as men, sometimes due to the relationship that we have sometimes with our mothers. Sometimes the relationships that we have with our mothers is bad. And that right there can go back to the domino effect of the relationship that she had with our father. And she may be bitter. She may be angry. She may hate him. She may hate the fact of that he broke her heart, or he wasn't everything that she wanted him to be. So whatever things happen in the adult relationship between your mother and your father, or your father and your mother, sometimes the mother emotionally and mentally can hold that hate or that anger toward your father. And then, although you are not your father, there are times wherein, because you remind her so much of him, then she can take out her anger and frustration and irritation and aggravation and agitation and all of these things. You can be the punching bag. You can be the focal point. You can be the person, who's going to suffer the repercussions of her scorn. And you get beat up and you get cussed out and you get told that you'll never be nothing and you're just like your daddy and you get on my last nerve and all of these things. So, as men, that can cause us to lose custody of ourselves because the woman, our mother that we love so much, we do not understand why is my mother attacking me when I haven't done nothing. I'm trying to do everything that I'm supposed to do. I respect my mother. I do not talk back to my mother. I will not slander her and I will not disrespect her. I said, but she's killing me, man. She's hurting me with her words, and she's physically, abusing me and demeaning me and throwing me under the bus. And I am not that type of person. So we can lose custody of ourselves due to things like that. We can lose custody of ourselves due to even relationship with our siblings. Sometimes relationship with our siblings due to the relationship that may have gone on between maybe the father and the mother, that created, once again, a domino effect. That is just everything is just one domino hitting another domino. And sometimes within the family structure, we were still talking about living what you've been taught. Sometimes in the family structure, sometimes parents can treat one child another way. Then you can end up having sibling rivalries, and you can have things, where one sibling, can have, animosity and jealousy and envy issues and against the other sibling, and they can hold grudges and many ill feelings, and and with brothers and sisters, or with brothers or sisters, it can be so bad where we can't, sometimes with siblings, they can't stand each other. They literally hate each other. You make me sick. That can cause us to lose custody. It can cause us to lose custody. And then we want to look at the fact of, although they are our sibling by blood, sometimes although we have the same father, the same mother, or the same mother, same mother, different father, or same father, different mothers, the thing of it is, although we're connected by blood, a bond still has to be built in order for us to truly still be siblings. A bond just doesn't form automatically. You have to build a bond. So that means that we have to be able to put aside those things that has caused the rift and work at building positive relationships even with our siblings. Then we want to look at this thing here that has caused men to lose custody of themselves, and that is the relationship with the woman in our life. It's bad. Our relationship with our children is bad. Our relationship on our job can be bad. Money struggles. Sometimes, we can lose custody of ourselves to where we form attachments with our possessions or assets. In other words, the things that we possess can become a security blanket in our life as men, wherein we give more attention to that than to the living, breathing, tangible people in our life. When we lose custody of ourselves, sometimes we can focus more on things than we can on the aspects of the people that are more important than the things. We can lose custody of ourselves feeling that I do not have significance or respect as a man. We can lose custody of ourselves, from anger beyond the norm, from how we were treated from childhood. All of us would get upset sometime. Even the scripture says, be angry. And then it throws a conjunction. It says, be angry, sin not. Neither let the sun go down upon your wrath. There are times, yes, we would get upset. But many of us, from things that have happened, we do not know how to channel that deep-seated anger that's been building and building and building from childhood. And we are angry beyond the norm. And when it comes out, it is like a volcano that just erupted. When it explodes, and all the steam and the gases and the lava and the fire and all of that stuff, some of us as men, we have lost custody of ourselves to anger so bad that it has literally caused us to destroy our lives, to destroy the lives of sometimes our wife or our significant other, our children. Sometimes it has caused us to do things in domestic relationships that we should not do, wherein we are imparting negative things to our children. That anger can literally has caused some of us to lose control so bad that we literally took another person's life. And now we're doing time. And we may be on death row because we lost custody of ourselves. And then we want to look at substance abuse that stems from the pain that you and I, maybe we didn't know how to identify. Substance abuse that stems from not knowing how to address the pain in our life, so we chose to cope with the pain through these alternative forms of comfort. These alternative forms to help us escape. These alternative forms to help us to kind of go into that carefree zone of, I don't want to worry about it. I do not want to deal with it. And then this last one, we've lost custody of ourselves when it comes to emotional trauma from relationship breakups, separations, divorce, broken friendships, those feelings of betrayal, being used. Sometimes we can lose custody even that way because of the dreams and the hopes that we had with that woman or our marriage or sometimes friendships and different things. We did not see the devastation coming that would pull us apart, that would break, the bond that we've had for so long. And as men, maybe this is you on today. Maybe this is you. And we are at a crucial place and a crucial point in our life as men, even as women, where it's time to start living again. It's time to start living again. We can cry out from our heart, our mind, our soul, and we could just simply say, Lord, it is time right now that I proclaim that today is the day I declare my declaration of independence from the people who hurt me, Lord, and who I have hurt, because even I have done wrong. I have hurt people. Lord, I forgive them as well as I forgive myself. And I apologize to everyone that I have hurt, since I have been lost in my pain and lost custody of myself. But most of all, Lord, Father, I ask you, will you forgive me for the things I have done to hurt you while I have been lost in my pain? And Father, I ask, will you help me day by day to regain full soul custody of myself? And will you help me build a relationship with you and myself to live and operate as the person that you created me to be? Lord, I am tired of living my life when I do not have custody of myself. I am tired of living wherein this person, I've given them custody over my life, to think for me, to feel for me, to decide for me. That is not living. So it is my prayer that you will help me gain custody of the person that you created me to be. Because there is so much in me that I do not even see. And I am at this place today. Father, show me myself. Show me the essence, the depth of who I am through your eyes in every way, so that I can be the best that I can be for you and for myself, so that I am able to give of myself the right way and stop making allowance to people and to the things that put my life under arrest. Until next time, this is Louis King for Soul Sessions. May this bless you on today, and may this help you. Have a blessed day, and I look forward to being with you once again. God bless you.